Alright, well, I just got done watching the new Thor movie. Um, geez, I've been looking forward to this basically since it was announced. I've been looking forward to Thor 2. Because I was, not because I was that big of a fan of the first one, but I'll get to there in a second. But right away, this basically this basically screams that they are moving forward with Phase 2 of the Marvel movies. I mean, yeah, Iron Man 3 was obviously Phase 2, like post Avengers world, but that's Iron Man. That's their most popular character, their most popular hero in the Avengers at this point. So of course they were going to make an Iron Man 3. I mean, the first two were so successful, but the fact that they are finally moving forward with sequels to Thor and Captain America, which those movies in themselves were pretty big risks considering how ridiculous the source material is. So I didn't really know what to expect from this one. I mean, Kenneth Branagh is not a part of it like he was in the first one. He's not the director. We don't have this Shakespearean director on board for Thor 2. Instead, we have Alan Taylor, who directed several episodes of Game of Thrones. And apparently, I'm not just going by the title here. I'm going by a bunch of the trailers too, oddly enough. This is a darker sequel. I mean, this movie promises to be darker and more intense than the first Thor, which I was fully in favor of. But at the same time, the challenge was kind of maintaining what they had in the first Thor, where they did not try to go too serious. Because if you try to go too serious, there's a strong chance that you can come off as severely unintentionally hilarious with a subject matter like Thor. I mean, Thor, he's a big, blonde, muscular dude who flies around hitting people with a hammer. That can be easily screwed up. And they don't. They did not screw it up in the first ones, and they did not screw it up here. And the plot of this one, it's as I mentioned before, it takes place after the Avengers, and basically after Loki was taken back to Asgard, he was immediately put in prison, and Thor has basically spent the past year or two going around the various realms and working with his warrior buddies and the other Asgardians to basically bring peace to the Nine Realms. But that peace is threatened by Natalie Portman's character, Jane Foster, back on Earth, stumbling across an anomaly which leads to discovering a relic called the Ether, and she accidentally unleashes the dark elf Malekith and his army of other dark elves. And these dark elves had previously menaced Thor's grandfather Bor, Thor's father Odin has. I mean, he's basically at a loss of what to do. He honestly does not. He's never really encountered this foe before, so he has no answers. I mean, the threat is bigger this time around. So, my encapsulated review is I really like this movie. I like this movie better than the first one, and that's not to say that I dislike the first one, but right off the top of my head is probably my least favorite of the Phase 1 Avengers setup movies. And thankfully, a lot of the gripes I had with the first one are fixed in this one. All right, so So Chris Hemsworth is still very good as Thor. I mean, there was a danger going in that I feared where after seeing him be pardon me, after seeing him basically act fantastically in Rush as James Hunt, I was kind of afraid. Am I going to be underwhelmed by his performance as Thor? But thankfully, that's not the case. I mean, he still embraces the role of Thor. He still fits the role of Thor, um, and he's still very very likable. And I think a large part of that has to do with the fact that there is visibly a real advancement in Thor's character from the first one to the Avengers to this one. I mean, the first one he was this really arrogant little warrior who's basically like, I'm gonna be king, no one can beat me, blah 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 blah. And thanks in no small part to his banishment to Earth and subsequent learning of humility, he's now much wiser. I mean, he's still fairly reckless. I mean, it's still the same character, but you can tell that he's learned a few things. He's more mature this time around, and I did like that. I did like that Thor was not as unlikable as he sometimes was in the original Thor. So Chris Hemsworth is very good at playing Thor. He's like I said, he's very believable. He looks like Thor from the comics. I just think he fits the role very well. I mean, as much as Robert Downey Jr. fits the role of Tony Stark. So he's still very good. Natalie Portman. They finally gave Natalie Portman something to do this time around. I really liked her in the first Thor. I mean, she was a lot of fun. I thought in the first Thor. I mean, she displayed a likable kind of perky energy to it, but at the same time, you could tell that she had a good head on her shoulders. So I thought she was a very likable character in the first Thor, but the thing was, they didn't really give her much to do. I mean, she was just kind of tagging along and there as an obligatory love interest for Thor. But here she's actually a pivotal part of the story. Like I mentioned earlier, she inexplicably comes across the ether, which is this basically all they say about it is that it's a relic. I mean, it's this very dangerous ancient relic of Malekith, and it doesn't really have a definite form. I mean, it's this it's this kind of black and red powder type stuff. It's more of a source of energy than anything. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. It's this really dark energy, and basically Malekith wants to use it to cover the 9 realms in darkness. So that's basically what Natalie Portman is here for. But what I liked about this one, and something I actually don't think that this one had enough of, was Natalie Portman in Asgard. How the roles have essentially been reversed. I mean, in the first one, Thor being banished to Earth, he was a real fish out of water, and Natalie Portman was basically there to show him around. Now, in the second one, Natalie Portman is in Asgard because Thor feels that she can be better protected there, so on and so forth. So she's new to Asgard, and yeah, they like in the first one, they don't hit you over the head with this very admittedly cliched fish out of water story. They don't hit you over the head with it. They don't play it for laughs so much as furthering Natalie Portman's understanding of of just the size of this universe and kind of furthering her relationship with Thor. So I really liked Natalie Portman in this one as much as about as much as I did in the first one. And what made her even more likable is that she actually had something to do this time around. Um, Tom Hiddleston is still very good as Loki. He still, I mean, he still carries that smarmy, slimy personality very well. Um, like much like Thor, if put in the wrong hands, this could easily be a very laughable character. But thanks to the writing, which always affords at least some winking at the camera, at least some acknowledgement that yeah, this is silly. This, I mean, we're big Norse gods living in this heavenly Valhalla type place. So Tom Hiddleston is still very fun as Loki. I also liked his advancement in character. I mean, not so much between the Avengers and this, but over the course of this. Um, I mean, he goes through a change that I think is fairly believable. Um, Much like the Natalie Portman in Asgard, though, this this storyline I wish could have gotten a little more time devoted to it. Um, Christopher Eccleston, I was actually a little disappointed in. I mean, he looks really cool as Malekith. I really like the designs of these dark elves. I mean, they basically look like evil mimes. That's that's the best way I can describe them off the top of my head. They look like evil mimes crossed with V from V for Vendetta. Um, but the thing with Christopher Eccleston in this movie, he's just there. He's just there to be menacing. He's there to basically say I'm the bad guy and I will destroy everything. Why? I don't know. Because I'm the bad guy. I mean, he's not quite as anonymous and boring as the Avengers aliens. I mean, the Dark Elves actually have more personality than the aliens from the Avengers. And like I said, the designs are what really make them distinct, but not much else. For the most part, it's just Christopher Eccleston and his underlings um, going around and saying how they're going to cover the lands in darkness and blah 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 blah. I mean, it's not a bad performance, but I just would have liked to see a bit more from quote unquote the main bad guy. Um, Anthony Hopkins is still he still looks half asleep. Honestly, he still looks he doesn't look like he's phoning it in, but at the same time, he doesn't really look like he's giving it his all either. I mean, maybe that has something to do with the limited amount that they give him to do, but yeah, he's still just kind of sitting there. I mean, with his eyes half closed all the time, speaking in this very soft voice, and all of a sudden he might erupt into a sudden scream or a yell, and then he'll go back to the soft voice. I mean, he doesn't really do a lot for me in these movies, and I like Anthony Hopkins, and he's not bad in these movies, but I just would have liked to see a little bit more energy in him for this role, and maybe that's what they were going for. Maybe they were going for Odin being this really tired old warrior king who's very weary from all his experiences, but I would have liked to have seen that conveyed a bit more than what we're given with Hopkins' sleep acting. But who really gets to shine this time around more so than she did in the first one is Renee Russo's character, Thor's mom. I mean, for her limited screen time in this, she actually manages to be a very sympathetic character. She's kind of like Glenn Close's character in Disney's Tarzan. I mean, she doesn't really have a whole lot of screen time, but you really buy her as as this very powerful female figure in these people's lives, but at the same time, you can also buy her as simultaneously accomplishing the feat of being a kindly mother figure. So kudos to Rene Russo for 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 not really having much to do. She got a lot done. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I don't care. Uh, Unfortunately, where the acting really falls apart, or well, the acting and the characters, where they really fall apart for me is is on Earth, because the majority of this movie takes place on Asgard, with the film only periodically cutting back to Earth to basically see what Natalie Portman's friends are doing, and I'll get to them in a second, but the some of the actors who, again, I would have liked to have seen more of, are Thor's warrior pals, um, especially given the obvious talent playing them. I mean, you have people like Jamie Alexander and Ray Stevenson, who are the main two, and I know that they can give these really fulfilling and investing performances, but the thing is, they're not allowed to. They try, but they just don't leave as big of an impact as Rene Russo for me. I mean, maybe it's because Rene Russo is a better actress, or maybe it's because her character is written more three dimensionally. I don't know, but Thor's warrior friends and Heimdall, the gatekeeper, who is played by Idris Elba. He's also kind of robbed of screen time, although he gets more to do in this one than he does in the first one. He's actually still not given much in the way of actual personality, but I liked some of his lines. I liked some of his kind of dry humor that he shared with Thor and the other Asgardians. So he was fine. I mean, again, none of these Asgardian actors are bad, but the thing is, they're not given much to do. Um, but the two actors who I actually really kind of hated in this movie um, are Stellan Skarsgård, and I never thought I'd say that. I never thought I'd say I really hated Stellan Skarsgård in this movie, but I actually kind of did. Stellan Skarsgård, he's reprising his role from the first Thor movie and the Avengers as Dr. Selvig. But the thing is, they make him this, I guess, as an after effect of being possessed by Loki for so long. I guess they make him this kind of crazy scientist guy or he was already a scientist, but they make him so odd, though. I mean, he's writing down equations on a chalkboard in a retirement home. Half the time, he doesn't even have any pants on, toward the beginning of the movie, you see a news report where he's basically running nude, streaking across Stonehenge, which that's what I wanted to see. Withered Stellan Skarsgård body. That's what I want when I go see Thor 2. Although in their defense, at least they didn't have John Turturro's body on screen like that other summer, like that other action movie that I will not name because it hurts me. But the actress who I really could not stand in the first Thor movie and more so in this one is Kat Dennings. I hate Kat Dennings. I hate her shtick in these movies. I hate her sitcom, that Two Broke Girls thing that she does. And she is such a boat anchor on these two movies. I mean, every single line out of her mouth feels like this really throwaway sitcom style gag. I mean, she will say lines in this that will, or at least for me, it made me roll my eyes. I probably rolled my eyes about 20 times in this movie because after something serious, after Natalie Portman will say something serious, or Chris Hemsworth will be doing his Thor thing over here. Kat Dennings will out of nowhere, her and her little British assistant intern guy in the movie, they will say something stupid, be doing something stupid with a prop in the background, and it just takes you out of the movie every time they are on screen. I cannot stand her in these movies. I can't stand her as an actress. I mean, you know what she reminds me of? She reminds me of a young Fran Drescher. And I'm not just saying that because she looks like Fran Drescher. I mean, she has that same type of shtick where she will say something. She will say something that is thought to be clever, and expect people to laugh at it in the middle of an otherwise serious situation. She has that really annoying voice. In retrospect, her voice isn't quite as annoying as Fran Drescher's. I mean, Fran Drescher, it's like nails on a blackboard. It's nails on a chalkboard with Fran Drescher. Kat Dennings does not have a voice as annoying as Fran Drescher's, but oh my god, I hated her in this movie. I mean, she's in it more than she was in the first one, I think. Granted, I haven't seen the first one in about a year or two, but I think they actually up her role in this one. She's helping out in the final battle. The movie periodically cuts back to her trying to figure out Natalie Portman's research stuff and trying to work with Stellan Skarsgård on Earth. And every time it cuts back to those people, I was just kind of knocking my head against the back of the seat. I'm like, really? We're going back here? I mean, can't we go back? Can't we stay in Asgard, please? I don't like these people. I was rooting for them to die. If they died, that would have not only cut off the movie's annoying blemish of a character, but it would have also made things a little bit more interesting for Natalie Portman's character. I mean, can you imagine what would happen if something from Thor's world came and killed her friends on Earth? I mean, can you imagine where they would be able to go with her and Thor's relationship? I mean, that would make it more interesting. That would be a Game of Thrones move right there from Alan Taylor, who's, like I said, he's directed several movies of Game of Thrones, and he directs this movie fairly competently, especially the Asgard stuff. But, man, Kat Dennings, if you like Kat Dennings as an actress, if you like her style of comedy, if you like her as an actress, I'm not trying to alienate you or anything, but it does not do a thing for me. Every time she's on screen, I just groan. I hate her so much, but I'm not going to dwell on that any longer. One other thing I wanted to talk about is the look of the movie. This, like I said before, this is a darker movie, and one of its methods of kind of attaining that grittier atmosphere is that the movie looks darker than the first one. It looks grittier. It looks, it's still very fantasy oriented, but Asgard looks different. You can still tell it's the same basic design, but it doesn't really look as ornate. It doesn't really look as, for lack of a better word, shiny as it did in the first one. I mean, Asgard looked actually kind of fake in the first one. Asgard looked kind of ridiculous. With all the, I'm trying to remember. I want to say there were a few lens flares whenever they were in Asgard in the first one, but I can't remember. This time around, it's like, Asgard. There are shots of Asgard in this that actually made me go, wow, because it looks that good. I mean, it's still computer generated, as far as I could tell, but the way they make it look here, they kind of make it look like King's Landing from Game of Thrones. I keep coming back to Game of Thrones, but they kind of make it look like a cross between a Game of Thrones style city and a Lord of the Rings style city. I mean, it's and with a little bit of Venice, Italy thrown in there. Um, I mean, it's Asgard looks gorgeous. I mean, I really liked how they kind of gridded up Asgard. Um, and that's a good thing because, like I said, they spend the majority of the movie in Asgard, so of course it should look better. Really, the only location that looks fairly identical to the first movie is the Heimdall's little sphere thing that aligns the worlds and opens the gates. I mean, that's really the only location I can think of where it immediately brought back memories of the first one. But yeah, I really like Asgard in this. It's I mean, you can tell it does look like it has a fair amount of Norse influence. I mean, these are Norse gods. So yeah, really liked Asgard. It was very ornate. It was very exotic, and it was very well realized setting. I thought. I mean, I hope to see more of it in the future. Um, uh, the action scenes I thought were better this time around. This, I mean, the action scenes are shot very clearly. There's like in the first one. I keep coming back to the first one, but it's a little hard not to. Like in the first one, there's a battle towards the beginning that kind of sets up Malekith as this really powerful deadly foe. I mean, it shows Odin's father battling Malekith and his kind of dark elf army. It's kind of like that opening to Fellowship of the Ring, where the Battle of the Last Alliance, where the men and elves all kind of engage Sauron and his orcs. I mean, it's kind of like that, although not really as laden with exposition, and not quite as epic as that. I mean, it is somewhat of a smaller scale. I mean, but it is it does well. It's filmed a lot better. It doesn't look totally artificial like the fight at the beginning of the first one, where Odin was leading this little identical CG army against the identical CG army of frost giants. It didn't look nearly as ridiculous as that. And one of the things that I think helps the action scenes in this is that a lot of them are done in a fairly in fairly close quarters combat style. I mean, there are several points in this where you see these really menacing looking creatures, not CG. These really menacing looking guys in prosthetics and this really wicked looking armor, battling the Asgardians and Thor and his warrior friends. So and not only that, the action scenes they are cut fairly quick. I mean, the editing is fairly quick, but it never gets to the point where you do not know what's going on, and it never, thank God, it never resorts to the shaky cam technique, which needs to die a horrible death. So the action scenes are shot better. They're more exhilarating. They're more much like Asgard. They're more grounded this time around, and I like that. The comedy I thought was the comedy I thought was better for the most part. I mean, there are some groaners, particularly on Earth. I mean, Earth seems to have the most jokes that fall flat, but the stuff on Asgard between Loki and Thor and Natalie Portman's character is, I mean, it hits those jokes and those little gags. They hit their mark most of the time. So, I mean, like I said before, they don't hammer you over the head with this fish out of water story. But but they do throw some jokes like that in there. Like Natalie Portman's like, "You told your dad about me." Um, I mean, lines like that are kind of made me go, "Really?" But for the most part, I thought the comedy was well done. It was delivered well, and it was timed well. Very good comedy on the part of these guys, um, except for Kat Dennings and Stellan Skarsgård. Um, I'm making it up like Stellan Skarsgård and Kat Dennings are on the same level of annoyance, and they're not. Stellan Skarsgård is he is Ian McKellen compared to Kat Dennings. I mean, he is. I mean, Stellan Skarsgård. He's not really that pleasant to watch in this movie, and I'm not just saying that because he's nude through half of it. But Kat Dennings far is on a far more extreme plane of annoyance. Um, okay, that's enough about them. I promise. um, what else did I like about the movie? Um, this, I thought this was a fairly exhilarating movie. I mean, I liked it basically on a consistent level all the way through, but there were some minor issues with it. Not only did a lot of the Earth stuff miss its mark in terms of comedy and drama, but like I said before, there are certain aspects of character development and whatnot that could have gotten more time if there were fewer action scenes. There is a lot of action in this movie. Um, I mean, there's maybe one or two too many action scenes. Um, that's not to say I was ever like, oh god, another action scene. But in 2 hours, I think they could have trimmed one of them down and added another scene of genuine of genuine dialogue and meaningful communication between the characters. I mean, I would have liked to have seen more interaction with these characters and less of Thor running around hitting people and Malekith destroying things. I mean, but with that said, this movie does fix a big problem I had with the first one, which was Thor not really battling many Asgardian level foes in the first one. I mean, in the first one, you probably know this by now. He was on Earth. He was human. He was basically stuck in New Mexico, in the New Mexico desert. So he didn't really get to exhibit the powers of Thor. I mean, he didn't really fight many god-like foes in the first one. This movie fixes that. Like I said, he's basically Thor throughout the whole movie. I mean, there is no going back to being a human. He basically fights foes worthy of a god throughout the whole thing, and that's what I think a lot of people, especially comic book fans, were kind of missing from the first one. And again, the first one is not bad, but it I think it left a lot to be desired. Um, in certain areas. But yeah, like I said before, the action scenes, they could have cut one or two of them down, especially toward the end. I mean, the end essentially, the last half hour or so of the movie essentially contains two climaxes. I mean, there's one climax where Thor, Loki, and Jane go up against Malekith and his forces in this what looks to be this very volcanic location. Um, but then almost immediately afterwards, they have basically another final confrontation with Malekith in London. And toward the end of that, I was just kind of like, okay, I'm getting a little tired of it now. It's not as grating as the 30-minute action scenes in Revenge of the Sith, but it kind of contributes to my argument where, yeah, we probably don't need as many action scenes like this. or at least not as many as we currently have in the movie. And I have a feeling that there are at least some deleted scenes of this character development that I was wanting. I mean, there are probably deleted scenes that are going to go out on the DVD of Natalie Portman interacting with Rene Russo, kind of seeing more of Asgard. So I hope there are anyway. That'll make me happy. That'll make me buy the DVD. Put those deleted scenes on there. Um, but yeah. Oh, another thing I like about this movie. This kind of, in a way, it contributes to the Asgard to my liking of Asgard, but it also doesn't. In that there are a lot of very very eye pleasing locations in this movie. Asgard being one of them. And another one of them I just brought up is the kind of really barren, really blackened volcano looking place that's where they fight Malekith. I believe they said that was Iceland, although I could very well be mistaken on that. But I actually really like that location. That looked like a really foreboding place, and I'm glad the movie spent a little time there for a fight, because it wasn't a purposely really dramatic location. They didn't add a volcano for the effect of, oh, won't this be cool, them fighting next to a volcano. No, it was this very barren, very desolate, essentially a wasteland. So I really like that location, and London is filmed relatively well. You really only see one section of London. I mean, there's no point in this movie where Thor and Malekith do battle around Big Ben. Although maybe that's an extended scene. I don't know, but London is shot relatively well. So I really like the cinematography in this, and I think that part of that comes from the short-handed direction of Alan Taylor. I mean, I honestly think Alan Taylor is better suited to make a Thor movie than Kenneth Branagh, and that's not a struck against Kenneth Branagh or anything, but I just like Alan Taylor's approach better. I like the fact that he grounds it in some sort of reality. There are still tongue-in-cheek moments, but it's I did like this movie more than the first one. I mean the characters are furthered. The acting is very good, with some exceptions. There's plenty of gorgeous scenery, and the cinematography does well in capturing that scenery and in the action scenes. And those action scenes are fairly exhilarating, even if there are a little too much of them. And it's just a really fun movie. I really had a blast in this movie. I really like this movie. And I really like that they are continuing this streak of Marvel movies that essentially do not take themselves too seriously. That's one thing I actually kind of missed in movies like Man of Steel and The Amazing Spider-Man, where they're basically trying to apply these superheroes to a real world setting. Or they visit the real world here, but they're essentially trying to make some of these superhero movies resemble the world that was set up in Christopher Nolan's Batman movies. Now, in those movies, putting Batman in this really dark world and this really conventional, practical, honestly very very realistic world made sense. I mean, Batman doesn't have any superpowers, but when you try to do that with Superman or Spider-Man, I mean, for me anyway, there's just a little bit of a disconnect there. I mean, there's just kind of, okay, we're watching a guy in red and blue tights run around saving the world. That's actually one reason I like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies better than I like the Amazing Spider-Man. Um, but I digress. Thor's a lot of fun. As for whether or not it's better than Iron Man 3, honestly, it's I think a large part of that has to. I think a large part of that depends on your taste because I don't necessarily think this movie is made any less competently than Iron Man 3. But they're different movies. I mean, for different heroes. So what I can say is that both of them, I think, do these superheroes justice. I think both of them are very fun popcorn flicks, very accomplished popcorn flicks, fairly well written, um, and yeah, it's just a blast. I really enjoyed this movie, despite some of the scenes at the end. Um, don't really know what Benicio del Toro was doing there, but but I guess it's supposed to set up that Guardians of the Galaxy, which I know nothing about. I've never read a single page of any Guardians of the Galaxy comic book, so I really don't know what to expect from that movie, and I was completely lost when Benicio del Toro showed up. If I hadn't known beforehand that Benicio del Toro was going to be in the Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy movie, I would have I would have been completely lost as to why he was here. But knowing that he's in the movie, yeah, I knew why he was there to basically promote the next one. Um, so yeah, Thor: Dark World, go see it. You will probably not regret it. I mean, there are some moments that are less impressive than others, but for the most part, I thought anyway that it was a it was a more enjoyable and more fulfilling Thor movie than the first one. And again, not that the first one was bad. I did like the first one. I did, but I just think this one's better. So take that for what it's worth, and I will talk to you later.